The scent inside Harmony High reeked of old pizza and stale dreams, but on that Wednesday morning, those dreams were about to get a rude awakening, refusing to stay dormant. Evergreen Heights High pulsed with the regular noise of brunch break, students gathering around tables like flocks of noisy birds, the clatter of metal forks scraping ceramic plates, and conversations rising and falling like a tidal wave of teen angst. The eating area stretched far, its dim lights creating soft glows across the checkered floor, highlighting a social stage where rankings were decided with the precision of clockwork. Way off in the back, next to the lockers that looked out on the basketball field, sat a young woman who wished she could vanish into thin air. Willow Blackwood had been tracking the time since her parents decided to relocate to this town. 31 days of figuring out confusing halls, sitting on her own in classes where everyone already knew each other's stories, and eating brunch in quiet while people chatted like she wasn't there. She had the sort of silence that was from experience, not timidity. Her light brown hair was like a shield around her face, and she had mastered the skill of seeming invisible, shoulders hunched forward, eyes looking down, actions slow and measured. Willow realized that being unseen was often the safest thing a person could be, but being unseen, she was about to find out, wasn't a strong protection. The salad her dad had prepped that day sat unopened on her plate, along with a glass bottle of iced tea and a peach that shone under the eating area's weak lights. Willow poked at the edges of her food, more interested in watching how folks moved through the place than eating. She saw how the popular students took over the center tables like celebrities at an event, how the book club met by the entrance, how the art students showed off their ideas with big movements that made their table feel like a studio. She was so into watching that she didn't see the start of trouble until it was right on her. 3 figures came out of the mass like foxes finding a lone rabbit. The main one moved with the sort of sureness that came from always getting her way, her shoulders square beneath a designer jacket that showed her status to anyone who cared. Her name was Tiffany Sterling, and she ran this part of high school world with a velvet glove hiding an iron fist. Behind her, her faithful friends walked like copies. Brittany Cox, thin and twitchy with a fake smile that followed Tiffany's every word, and Ashley Stone, no friend of Willow, even though they were in the same class, who tried to make up for her lack of height, with a great desire to show her loyalty to the group's pecking order. Oh my. Tiffany's voice cut through the background noise like a knife. It looks like we have a newcomer in our area. Willow gripped her tea bottle, her fingers cold as she felt the focus of attention going to her spot. She kept her eyes on her salad, hoping that if she acted like they weren't there, they might give up and find someone else to bother. But Tiffany Sterling had made her name on never backing down from anything she saw as a weakness. "Hey, I'm talking to you," she said, her voice louder, meant to reach the whole area and get people watching the drama. "Didn't anyone teach you it's impolite to ignore folks when they're being friendly?" The word friendly was said with so much fake sweetness it was almost solid. Willow finally looked up, her green eyes meeting Tiffany's hazel ones with a mix of worry and acceptance. She had seen this scene played out in every school she had been to, the same things, the same meanness, only the names changed. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice hard to hear over the eating area noise. "I didn't realize you were talking to me." Brittany giggled, that fake, shrill sound that seemed to be her way of reacting to everything. Ashley moved from side to side, her hands stuck in her jacket pockets, already looking forward to the entertainment about to happen. "That's better," Tiffany said, but her tone showed it wasn't better at all. "Now, here's the deal, sweetie. This table." She put her hand flat on the surface, her fingers spread out like a hawk claiming its land. "This has been our space since freshman year. It has the best light, the best view of the doors, and most of all, it's ours." Willow looked around the table, a confused look on her face. There were no names written on the surface, no reserved signs, nothing to show ownership other than Tiffany's words. "I didn't know," she said, already starting to pack her things. "I can move." "Oh, you'll move," Tiffany interrupted, her smile like a knife. "But first, I think you need a lesson about rules, about how things work here." The eating area seemed to feel the shift in the air. Talks at nearby tables got quieter, but not silent. No one wanted to seem too interested in case they became the next target. Instead, they did that thing teens do of watching without watching, of seeing bad behavior while pretending not to notice. Willow stood up slowly, her plate in her hands, but Tiffany stepped to the side, blocking her way with casual rudeness. "Where are you going?" she asked with fake worry. "We're just meeting. I haven't even said my name. I'm Tiffany, this is Brittany and Ashley. We're like the welcome group here." "Some welcome," Willow said under her breath, so quietly she thought no one would hear. But Tiffany's ears were sharp when it came to hearing defiance. "Excuse me?" Her voice dropped to a low whisper. "Did you just talk back to me?" The question hung in the air like the smell of smoke from a fire that was just starting. Willow felt her heart pounding, felt the feeling of walls closing in. This was the time when she usually gave up, when she apologized and disappeared and let the bullies win. But something was different today. Maybe it was the weight of 31 days of being alone. Maybe it was thinking about her dad, who had made that salad with such care, who had kissed Willow's forehead that day and told her to have a good time. Maybe it was just that she was tired, really tired, of running from folks like Tiffany Sterling. "I said this is some welcome," Willow repeated, louder this time, her voice clear. Brittany's fake giggle stopped. Ashley stopped moving from side to side and stood still, her eyes big with shock. Even Tiffany seemed taken aback by this unexpected show of courage. But she recovered fast, her shock turning into something worse. "You know what?" Tiffany said, her voice taking on that tone bullies used when they wanted everyone to know something fun was about to happen. "I don't think you get it yet. Maybe you need a more hands-on lesson. What happened next happened with the bad certainty of a train crash. Everyone could see it coming, but no one could stop it." Tiffany reached for Willow's plate with casual meanness, planning to knock it out of her hands and send her food flying across the floor. It was a classic move, meant to embarrass while seeming almost accidental. The sort of bullying that was hard to report because it could always be called an accident, just kids being kids. But as her hand got close to the plate, something surprising happened. Willow didn't move. She didn't back away or hide or apologize. Instead, she held the plate tighter and looked Tiffany in the eye. "Don't," she said. It was just one word, but it had the weight of every bad thing she had ever been through, every time she had been pushed around, every time she had chosen to be quiet instead of standing up. It was 31 days of anger in one sound. Tiffany's hand stopped in the air. For a moment, something showed on her face. Shock, confusion, maybe even a hint of fear. The confident mask slipped just enough to show the unsure girl underneath, the one who needed to hurt others to feel strong. The eating area around them had gotten noticeably quieter. Not silent, that would have been too obvious. But the noise had dropped enough that talks were harder to keep going, that the drama in the back was hard to ignore. "What did you just say to me?" Tiffany asked, but her voice wasn't as sure as before. There was something in Willow's eyes that she hadn't expected. Not fear, not giving in, but a quiet strength that seemed to come from somewhere deep. "I said don't," Willow repeated, her voice steady. "Don't touch my food. Don't touch my table. Don't touch me." Brittany and Ashley looked at each other, their earlier excitement replaced by worry. This wasn't going as planned. The new girl was supposed to fall apart, to give them the easy fun they had come to expect from these times. Instead, she stood there like a tree that had decided to stop bending in the wind. Tiffany felt the weight of people watching, felt her image starting to shake. She had built her place on times like this, on public displays of power that showed her spot in the high school world. To back down now would be to ask for questions about her power, to show weakness that others might use. So she pushed harder. "Listen, you little weirdo," she said, stepping closer to Willow, close enough that she could smell the perfume she wore to hide her fears. "I don't know what world you're in, but this is real life, and in real life, you don't get to tell me what to do." She reached for her tea bottle, planning to knock it over and send tea spilling across the table and onto her clothes. It was childish, meant more to embarrass than to hurt. But as her fingers closed around the bottle, Willow's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, not violently, not aggressively, but firmly, with a grip that showed determination instead of anger. "Let go," Tiffany said, her voice tight with shock and rising anger. "Let go of my food first," Willow replied calmly. The standoff stretched between them like a tight rope. Tiffany pulled against her grip, but Willow held firm. Around them, the eating area seemed to hold its breath, feeling that something important was happening, even if they couldn't quite see what. Tiffany's face turned red with shame and anger. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone she had seen as an easy target. Her free hand made a fist, and for a moment, the chance of real violence hung in the air. But then Willow did something that no one expected. She let go, not giving up, not submitting, but as a choice. She let go of Tiffany's wrist and stepped back, her hands at her sides, her body straight and unafraid. "I'm not going to fight you," she said clearly, her voice louder than she meant. "But I'm not going to run away either." Tiffany stumbled back as her own force carried her away from the table. The tea bottle slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a crash, tea spreading across the floor in a shape that seemed to match the chaos of the moment. "You," Tiffany started, but the words seemed stuck in her throat, because something had changed in the room. The people who had gathered to watch Willow's embarrassment were seeing something else. A young woman who refused to be broken, who had chosen respect over revenge, who had found strength in being still instead of fighting. "She's right, you know." The voice came from across the eating area, from a table of students who had been watching with worry. A boy named Samuel Park, Willow would learn his name later, had stood up, looking serious. "She's not bothering anyone," Samuel continued, his voice clear. "She was just trying to eat her food." Another voice joined his, then another. Not a crowd, that would have been too much, but a slow rise of agreement that seemed to come from the feeling of the room. "Yeah, just leave her alone. This is dumb. What's your problem, Tiffany?" Tiffany looked around wildly, seeing her support falling apart like sand. The easy win she had expected had turned into something else, a moment of truth that left her open and alone. Brittany and Ashley were backing away, their loyalty gone in the face of changing feelings. They had signed up to be on a winning team, not to be with someone who was being called out for her meanness. "This is stupid," Tiffany said, but her voice wasn't sure. She looked at Willow one last time, maybe looking for some sign of the fear she had expected, some proof of her power. Instead, she found only steady green eyes that seemed to see through her, that saw her show for what it was, the act of someone trying to tell herself, as much as others, that she was important. Without another word, Tiffany turned and walked away, her careful walk replaced by the clumsy steps of someone who had lost a fight she had never thought she would have. Brittany and Ashley ran after her, leaving Willow standing alone by her table, tea still spreading on the floor. The eating area slowly went back to its normal noise, but the feeling had changed. Talks that started again had a feeling of something different, a shared feeling that they had seen something important, even if they couldn't say what it was. Willow bent down and started cleaning up the tea with napkins from her plate, her actions careful. Some students came to help, offering their own napkins, saying words of support. Samuel Park was among them, kneeling down beside her to help soak up the mess. "I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice just for her. "We should have said something sooner." Willow looked up at him, surprised by the real regret in his face. "It's okay," she said. "I get why you didn't." "It's not easy to get involved." "Still," Samuel said, "it wasn't right. What she did, what we let her do, it wasn't right." As they cleaned up the mess, Willow felt something she hadn't felt since coming to Evergreen Heights High, a feeling of belonging, of being connected, of being seen not as a target, but as a person. The time with Tiffany became a turning point, not just for Willow, but for the whole social scene of the school. Word spread fast about the young woman who had stood up to Tiffany Sterling without fighting or yelling, who had found power in refusing to be powerful. Tiffany's image, built on fear and careful shows of power, started to fall apart. Without the easy wins from hurting those she saw as weak, her real self became harder to hide. Students who had laughed at her meanness started to see it for what it was, and her group of friends slowly got smaller. Willow, meanwhile, found that standing up for herself had opened doors she hadn't expected. Students who had seen her quiet bravery started talking to her, some sharing their own times with bullying, others just wanting to be with someone who had shown such grace under pressure. She found herself asked to join study groups, to sit with different students at brunch, to be part of talks that had nothing to do with the fight that had gotten her noticed. For the first time since moving to town, Willow started to feel like she might fit in somewhere. The table by the lockers, once taken by Tiffany through fear, became Willow's by choice. Students started joining her there, Samuel Park with his quiet smarts, Olivia Gomez with her infectious laugh, Jason Lee with his dry humor that could calm things down in any group. They talked about schoolwork and shows, about their dreams for the future and their worries about the present. They laughed at jokes and helped each other through hard classes and family problems and all the things that make up high school life. But most of all, they made a place where someone like Willow, quiet, thoughtful, still finding her place, could feel safe being herself. The fight with Tiffany had lasted less than 5 minutes, but its effects kept going through the school year. Teachers started to see the change in class, the way students seemed more willing to speak up when they saw unfairness, more likely to include others. Willow changed too, but maybe not in ways that were easy to see. She was still quiet, still thoughtful, still liked listening more than talking. But there was a new sureness in her body, a strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She had learned that strength didn't have to be loud, that bravery could be found in refusing to give up one's respect, that sometimes the strongest thing a person could do was stand still and let others show their real selves through their choices. Years later, long after graduation, the students who had been there that day would still remember the young woman who had changed everything without fighting, who had found her power not in fighting back, but in refusing to be broken. They would take that lesson with them into life, using it in meetings and classrooms, in relationships, whenever they saw someone trying to use fear to keep their power over others. And Willow? She would become the sort of person that quiet Wednesday morning had shown she could be, someone who knew that real strength came from inside, that respect was a choice, and that sometimes the most important thing was refusing to play by the rules that bullies tried to put on the world. The tea stain on the eating area floor was cleaned away in hours, but the effect of what had happened there would last far longer, going out through the lives of everyone who had seen one girl's decision to stand her ground without giving up her values, to be strong without being mean, to change everything by changing nothing more than her own choice to accept treatment she didn't deserve. In the end, that was enough, more than enough. 20,020 characters.